Yeah, got it all down. Fantastic. François. Sure. You guys have all a good time, and see you at the end.
Yes, thank you so much.
Hello. My name is Laurel Collins, and I am running to be your next MP for Victoria. It is so great to be here with you today on the homelands of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, of the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. I am grateful to the nations and the people who have stewarded this land, and grateful to be with a party who puts reconciliation and supporting Indigenous rights at the heart of everything that we do. Thank you so much for coming today. As most of you know, today was the climate strike, and I had the privilege of being down there with Jagmeet and of marching with thousands of people in our city. And every day, I talk to people who are worried about the climate crisis. They're worried about protecting our coast, and they're worried about what that means for their future and their children and their grandchildren. People are telling me that they are frustrated with politicians who refuse to take action. The time to act is now. The NDP has a proven track record of standing up for the issues that matter most. Jagmeet and the NDP understand that social inequality and the climate crisis are interconnected. And we have a plan to tackle the climate crisis, to invest in housing, and to ensure we have a future where no one is left behind. Now, it is my privilege to introduce someone who has fought for our community. He has fought for improved transit. He has fought for the southern resident killer whales. He's fought for our human rights. Please welcome my friend and mentor, longtime MP, and your candidate for Esquimalt Saanich-Sooke, Randall Garrison.
Wow, what a crowd. Thanks so much, Laurel, for that kind introduction, and I'd like to ask all of you to join me in giving another hand for our next MP from Victoria, Laurel Collins. So, as most of you know, I'm Randall Garrison. I'm the Member of Parliament for Esquimalt Saanich-Sooke. And like Laurel, I've been talking to a lot of voters in the past few days, and they all say the same thing. They say British Columbia is a very special place. They're very proud of our pristine coast, and they're very proud of our diverse communities. And they're looking for a leader who's prepared to defend those things that we are so proud of. Justin Trudeau said he'd be different. He said a lot of things and made a lot of promises, but those pretty words turned into broken promises. He said he understood the urgency of climate change, and then he let big polluters off the hook, and he bought a pipeline. Jagmeet Singh is different. We know that. Today, Jagmeet signed a pledge to protect our coast against the Trans Mountain Pipeline extension and increased tanker traffic. That's something that both the Liberals and Conservatives want to impose on British Columbians. Jagmeet Singh is different. He's going to stand up for us. He's going to fight for our coast. And in this campaign, Jagmeet is the leader who's taking on the rich and well-connected. He's standing up to powerful insiders. And he's putting forward the ideas that will make life better for all of us, not just the few. I'm inspired every day by his leadership. I'm proud to work with him in Ottawa, and now I would like you to join me in giving a very warm welcome to Jagmeet Singh, leader of the New Democratic Party of Canada.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. How's it going, Victoria? Wow, this is pretty amazing. I mean, if you get a chance to look around, there's a lot of people here. That's pretty cool. Friends, we've got an incredible team of candidates, an incredible team. And if you could just join me for a moment, we've got in the front row here, we've got Sabina, Randall, Laurel, Alistair. We've got a whole team of candidates up and down the island, all across BC and all across Canada. Can you just, for a moment, give them some recognition as our incredible team? So friends, I want to hear from you today. So we're going to have some time to chat and get to hear some questions. Before we do that, I want to lay out a little bit about what's going on, some of the challenges that we're faced with, and a little bit of an update of what's at stake and what we've got to do. So a lot of you know this, and I'm sure you've spoken with friends and family that tell you these stories, but I want to share with you a little bit of what I've heard from the road, traveling across Canada. One of the things today, Laurel touched on this and Randall touched on this, today we know that thousands and thousands of young people took to the streets in cities across Canada demanding action on the climate crisis. And I think we should just take a moment to acknowledge the power of young people, how many of them took to the streets, how inspiring it was to see so many young people. Like we saw little kids who were barely 6 years old to university students, all there demanding action for climate. And that was pretty beautiful to see. I remember speaking with one woman in particular, a young woman, and I asked her what did it mean to be there at the climate rally, at this climate action. And she said, you know, I was really angry. I was really frustrated. I felt like, how could leaders let me down and betray our future? How could someone like Mr. Trudeau say pretty words on one hand, but deliver empty promises? How could he do that? She was angry. She was frustrated. She also was feeling a little despair. She's like, I don't know what to do. Like, this seems like such an insurmountable, overwhelming, difficult challenge. How do I overcome it? And she said, I was kind of losing hope. But when I came here today, she was talking about in front of the Legislative Assembly, so when I came here today and saw so many people, thousands of people coming out, I didn't feel as alone. I felt like people do care, that if we come together, we can actually solve this problem. And that was pretty inspirational to hear that shift from despair to hope. But the reality is a lot of young people are angry and they're frustrated, and they're right to be frustrated because they've been let down. You know, their future is so crucially important, and people always talk about their kids being their future and kids being so important. Well, kids are demanding action. They're saying, please do something. We're worried about the future of this planet. I want to let those kids know. I want to let everyone across this country know, everyone across this world know, that we will not let them down. We will not let them down. And then we look at, you know, the other issues that people are faced with, the other problems that people are struggling with. We know that climate crisis is one of the biggest stresses in people's lives, and rightly so. But as Laurel's mentioning, something that's unique to New Democrats is we don't think of each issue on its own. We know they're all interconnected. We know that people are also worried about things like housing. Here in Victoria and across the island and across BC, people can't find a place to call home. And those that have a place to call home are worried if their kids are ever going to be able to not just buy a place, they're worried if their kids could ever rent a place. It's becoming so hard. I've met so many young people that tell me their biggest fear is they don't know if they can ever own a home or even rent a place. So that's something we've got to tackle. We know that people are worried about healthcare. You know, we're really proud as Canadians. We've got this healthcare system that's a pride of the world in a lot of ways. People look to us and say, wow, you've got something pretty amazing. And we do. But over the years, that really amazing system that we built up has been eroded. Decision after decision made in Ottawa by Conservatives and Liberals have starved the funding for this beautiful system. And then what happens when something that is amazing, that we're so proud of, gets starved of funding? What happens? Well, slowly, something starts to creep in. Someone says, well, what if I pay for this service? What if I pay for that service? And eventually, the public system that we've built and that we've become so proud of becomes eroded, and then there's a privatization that starts to enter. And then slowly, it starts replacing that one-tier system with a two-tier system. And that's the risk. That's the threat. If we allow the continued ongoing trend where less and less funding is being delivered at the federal level, it means we might lose that precious public healthcare system that we so cherish. Friends, I want you to know, I'm pretty sure I speak for everyone in this room, we will not let that happen. In healthcare, I also hear a lot of really painful stories about the lack of access. Because of that starved system, people can't get the care they need when they need it. And I've met a lot of people that can't afford the medication they need to stay well. I remember I met a woman who got late onset type 1 diabetes. She was just completed her master's, and she said, I was healthy my whole life. I never worried about medication. I never worried about going to the doctors because I never needed to. But then I got diagnosed with late onset type 1 diabetes, and I didn't have any coverage. And I earn a good living, I have a good job, but it's cost me thousands and thousands of dollars. And it's a worry that I have. And she's like, I can't save up to buy a home because my medications cost so much. And I have no choice, I have to take it or I'll die. I met a kid, 10 years old, and he lived with a chronic illness. He was one of those young kids that's wise beyond his years because he's dealing with a really stressful illness. So he told me about the medication and the injections. He's like, I gotta take these different pills, and I've got to monitor my blood. And he looked at me, and he could tell I was worried about him because he was so dealing with all this worry. And he said, if I don't take care of myself, I know I might die. And I was kind of taken aback at how casually he was speaking about death. And then he could see the worry in my eyes, and he said, no, don't worry about me. I'm okay. I can do this. 10-year-old kid, he's like, I can do this. I'm all right. But I am worried about how much my medication costs my mom and dad. He's a little kid, 10 years old, and he's worried about being a burden on his mom and dad. I'm like, it shouldn't be that way. That kid shouldn't feel like a burden. And then I think about, the other worries that people have, and the fact that the healthcare system that should cover people when they need it is not always there for them. Things like dental care, it's not covered. People don't get access to the mental health services they need. There's a massive gap in our system. Then I look at the options. Well, who's going to stand up for these people who are worried about climate crisis, who are worried about the cost of living, worried about housing and the healthcare system? Say, okay, well, are the Liberals going to stand up for these folks? Thanks for that. I was hoping you'd say that. That wouldn't have worked well if you had said yes. I just kind of leapt on was on a limb there. Thank you for that. That was good. Whew. So no, they're not. It's true. They're not going to be there. And we know why. Take pharmacare, for example. Mr. Trudeau announced a plan recently that they're going to put in pharmacare. Then we looked at the plan, and it's basically they're going to negotiate with drug companies to maybe, hopefully, give some breaks on medication. It's not actually a plan, and there's no actual universality in it. In fact, we know that Mr. Trudeau is not going to do it because the Liberal Party has been promising pharmacare for how many years? Does anyone know? 22 years they've been promising it. Well, this time they were a little bit more honest. They normally promise pharmacare, and then after the election they break the promise. This time, during the election, they admitted it wouldn't be universal. So at least they're being honest this time. So they're not going to tackle the healthcare issue. And I want to give you one concrete example. You know, looking at the problems that we're faced with, the fact that we're worried about the climate, we're worried about our healthcare, worried about housing, how did we get here? How do we get to this point? That's true. Someone said a good answer. I appreciate that answer. Neoliberalism is the answer, but still academic. Simply put, governments in Ottawa haven't been working for people. They've been working for those at the very top. They've been working to make life easier for multimillionaires and billionaires and wealthy corporations. And by making it easier for them, they've made life harder for everyone else. They've consistently made decisions that have put those at the top ahead and everyone else behind. And back to Mr. Trudeau, the example, the concrete example of why he would never bring in pharmacare. Well, in 2015, he made a promise. He said, I'm going to change the list of countries that we set our prices for medication. And by changing the list of countries, it's going to drop the cost of medication significantly. And he's right, because the board that sets the prices demanded, they asked, if you give us a new list of countries, we can drop the price of medication. That's a zero-cost solution. It wouldn't cost us a cent. 4 years went by, and Mr. Trudeau didn't do it. I was wondering, why wouldn't he do something as simple as changing the list of countries? It costs us nothing. Why wouldn't he do it? We figured out why. In 4 years, he met with Big Pharma, him and his government. They met with Big Pharma, and they met with insurance lobbyists a whole bunch of times. Rough guess of how many times? In 4 years. 500? I got a 500? Feel like it's an auction. It's no higher. Someone jumped to 2,000. You're ruining my story because that's way too high. 2,000 is that's a lot. I mean, 500 is already a lot. Someone said 800? Combined, we've counted at least 875 times. That is massive. Just to put into perspective, that is massive. And so after 4 years of being lobbied so many times by the big pharma and the big insurance company lobbyists, Mr. Trudeau's government gave up on that promise. Again, it's no coincidence, because they rather work to protect the profits of the insurance companies and the big pharma companies rather than protect families. It's a choice. It's not a coincidence. This is a choice they're making. And again, with the climate, you know, the simplest first step that should be taken is, why is it that billions of our public dollars are going to the fossil fuel sector? It makes no sense. It makes no sense. Now, Mr. Trudeau made the promise. He said, I'm going to end fossil fuel subsidies when he was campaigning in 2015. And so again, well, what happened in 4 years? He didn't follow through on that commitment. Why didn't he? The lobbyists. We did a little search. And we found out that he met with the energy lobbyists a whole bunch of times. Rough guess how many times? Hint. A little bit more than the big pharma and insurance companies. 1,000? Very close. Over 1,500 times. 1,500 times he met with the energy lobbyists, and obviously he again caved to the demands of the powerful elite rather than helping out people, young people who are saying, please do something to protect our environment, do something to protect our future. Mr. Trudeau said, no, I'd rather protect the profits of those at the very top again. So it's an ongoing trend here. So the Liberals aren't going to do it. They're not going to stand up for people. They're not going to make life better for people. And I'm not sure I need to say this in this crowd, but are the Conservatives the answer? I'll take that laughter as a strong no, okay? Thank you. That one I didn't feel like I was going on a limb very much. I felt pretty secure on that one. So, I mean, just to make it clear, though, Mr. Scheer is going to say that he's going to put money in the pockets of families. He's going to say that. We're going to hear him say that. He's going to say, I'm going to put some money in your pockets. And sure, he might put a couple dollars in people's pockets. He's going to cut taxes a little bit for people. But what else is he going to cut? He's going to cut services massively. He's going to save a little bit of money by some tax cuts, mostly for the wealthiest, but might save some people a couple dollars. but then he's going to cut all the services that you and your family need, and it's going to cost a whole lot more. It's going to be difficult. And we've seen that before. We've seen that story before, right? I was with Mr. Harper. That's exactly what he did. Mr. Scheer is going to do the same thing. So Mr. Trudeau's not going to make things better. Mr. Scheer is not going to make things better. What other option do we have? It's all of us. That's right. And I just want to say one thing on the Green Party. You know, I know that they share our commitment to fighting the climate crisis. They both are concerned about it. But there's a really big difference. For us, social justice, like we talked about, healthcare, housing, they're non-negotiable. We don't negotiate with those things. Those are very important to us. We also very proudly do not negotiate a woman's right to choose. So, it warms my heart. It warms my heart to be in a room of New Democrats who would applaud so loudly to that. That's amazing. That's amazing. But we've even heard from Ms. May, from her own comments, that she would support a Scheer government. She would put Mr. Scheer, a conservative, into the seat of the Prime Minister's office. She said that. And she's also allowed anti-abortion candidates to run for her party right now. So those things are non-negotiable. For the New Democrats, you know, I've ruled out entirely. I will never work with someone like Mr. Scheer, with conservatives. And not only do we proudly support every single one of our candidates are proudly pro-choice, but we want to expand access to abortion services because we know how important they are, and they need to be expanded and invested in. So friends, I put it to you this. I'm going to wrap up here because I need to hear from you. I put it to you this. We've got a new deal for people. A new deal for people that says we can invest in our healthcare system and expand it to ensure that everyone in our country has access to medication when they need it. If you need medication in our country, you should use your health card, not your credit card. We're going to expand. We're going to put in place a government public insurance program to cover 4.3 million Canadians who don't have dental coverage right away. We're going to put that in place. On day one of a new Democratic government, we're going to end fossil fuel subsidies and invest our money into clean, renewable energy. We're going to retrofit every home and every building to reduce emissions and create jobs. We're going to invest in public transit and electrify transportation. We are going to make sure young kids have a bright future. And friends, the reason is this. People are going to ask how we're going to pay for this. They're going to say, how are you going to pay for all these ideas? Exactly what we're going to do. Exactly what we're going to do. That's it. That's it. But I'm going to tell you exactly how we're going to tax the rich. We're going to do it in a very clear way. First, we're going to impose and put in place a super wealth tax. This is a tax on those who've got fortunes of over $20 million. We're going to put a tax on that. I'm pretty sure that's no one in this room. But even if it is, I'm sorry, we're going to tax you. Someone's like, yes, I can live with it. You're the best. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to close offshore tax havens. That's $23 billion that we're losing. And the final thing we're going to do, we're going to make different choices. I want to give you one example, one really clear example. Last year, Mr. Trudeau spent money on the following things. He gave $14 billion to the wealthiest corporations in the fall economic statement, just last year, so that the wealthiest corporations could buy corporate jets and limousines. And the baby's crying because that's sad. That is sad that they did that. So I agree with you, baby. It's sad. He spent $4.5 billion on a pipeline. And this almost is one of the most galling things. He forgave $6 billion in corporate loans. So that's the wealthiest corporations got $6 billion forgiven. That's almost $25 billion last year alone. Put that on one side, $25 billion. Our plan to cover Dentacare for all those Canadians who don't have coverage, who earn less than $70,000 a year, that's 4.3 million Canadians. That plan would cost $856 million, meaning it could be paid 25 times over with the money that Mr. Trudeau spent on the wealthiest, most powerful. That's the matter of choices. Because friends, I don't work for the rich. I don't work for the people at the top. I work for all of you. Thank you. Thank you. And now, thank you very much. Now we're going to get to some questions. So we got a mic roving around. And where are the mics? We got them. Someone in the back here has got a mic. Yes, go ahead, right there.
People sometimes are concerned that New Democrats overspend and overpromise. Why should Canadians and in general, and we in this room, trust you to be fiscally responsible?
Thank you for the question. We believe in being responsible. We understand the weight. I understand the weight that's being placed on us as New Democrats. People are counting on us. So we would use very responsible fiscal measures to make sure we've got revenue from the wealthiest to fund programs for people, not for corporations, not for the wealthiest. So we would take the budget very seriously, and we wouldn't run deficits like Mr. Trudeau has to pay for basically giving billions of dollars to billionaires. We wouldn't spend $12 million on buying fridges for Loblaws. We would spend, that's true. We would be very responsible with making sure we have revenue to pay for the programs that invest in people. And that's really the difference. New Democrats don't believe in giving billions away like Mr. Harper did to the wealthiest corporations with massive tax cuts, with no strings attached, and in doing so gave billions of dollars to companies that then close their factories and ship their jobs offshore. We're not going to give that $25 billion that I just laid out that Mr. Trudeau did to the wealthiest corporations. Instead, we're going to invest in people. And that's a responsible use of our dollars, and it's going to result in better return on that investment, because when you invest in people, it builds a better country. It builds a better society. Yeah.
When, before he was elected, Prime Minister Trudeau promised to engage in nation-to-nation relations with First Nations, which, from my understanding, is nation by nation, but seems to have moved toward a formula that suggests that if a majority of nations approve a given project, it's a green light. And so you spoke about electrification, and I'm concerned about Site C. That was not a green light. And we're looking at a project that now, in terms of its length, basically almost goes up the whole length of the island if you include the Peace and the Bennett Dam, leaving the people in that area with virtually nothing. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, would you move to stop Site C? Because our provincial NDP hasn't.
Thank you for the question. Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you. It's okay, we have to have some tough discussions. It's important for us to have those. You talked about Mr. Trudeau and his approach. It's important to point out, he said on one hand in public that the relationships with Indigenous peoples was the most important relationship. He said it numerous times. And then that was his public comments. And then in private, at a fundraiser in Toronto, when an activist who was speaking on behalf of the people in Grassy Narrows, a community that is struggling with mercury poisoning, said, what are you going to do about cleaning up the mercury poisoning in our community? Mr. Trudeau, in private, said, thank you for your mocked that person and said, thank you for your donation, while the wealthy donors all laughed and jeered. And that's a really clear example of what happens in private versus what happens in public. And I can tell you, when I look at, I've been to Grassy Narrows, and I've seen the people in Grassy Narrows suffering with mercury poisoning. But this is I'm talking about mercury poisoning in Grassy Narrows. But I'm talking about some people that are really struggling. So give me a moment to talk about these people. It's a very important issue. And so those people that are struggling with mercury poisoning, I can't imagine how someone would say in private to mock people who are dealing with such a horrible issue. And so for us, reconciliation is a tough path, but it's a path that we have to be committed to. And it's going to mean we're going to have to work hard. It means that projects can't go ahead without making sure communities have prior and informed consent. And they have to be free and prior informed consent. That's what we believe in. We also believe in the United Nations Declaration. So under a new democratic government, what I would put in place is the United Nations Declaration to ensure that nations are treated as nations and that Indigenous communities are treated with respect and dignity. I would put that into law to make sure that any decision moving forward would never contravene those principles. Okay. Yes, more hands up. We got some people in the front here? Yeah, yes.
Hi, thank you. So last year it was revealed that there are over 5,000 homeless veterans in Canada, which is absolutely disgraceful. What are you going to do about it?
Thank you for the question. Yeah. Thank you, yeah, for sure. That's a very important question. So veterans, these are people that are putting their life on the line for us. They're people that have sacrificed their whole lives. They've served for our country, and they discharge their service and then have no supports and have no protection, and they're left and neglected. That is shameful, the treatment of veterans in Canada. We just saw in the last couple of years, there were standards of service that veterans should have. Simple things like when they request coverage for a benefit and they ask, am I covered or not? Veterans had to wait months and months to get an answer. And we looked at the budget, and the budget that was set aside for veterans, year after year, there's an amount that was set aside, but it wasn't spent on veterans. Again, shameful. We've got people that have served for our country. They need to have access to services. They need to have access to mental health services. They need to have timely responses. And if veterans are not housed and are not living in good conditions, we need to immediately ensure that they get housing, they get supports. These are the men and women that have served us. We need at least to serve them back by ensuring that they are supported and given the services and help that they deserve and need. Yeah? You got a mic back here? Yeah.
Thank you for coming to Victoria.
Thank
Our
you.
lovely little city is also one of the third most expensive housing communities in the country. I have a pretty good job and I spend half my paycheck on rent, and I don't think I'll ever save up enough for a down payment for a home. What are you going to do to stop skyrocketing rents and increase access to affordable housing?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. Yeah, it's a national crisis, and I've met so many people just like you who are spending so much of their salary on their rent, and it leaves very little left at the end of the month to pay for the other things that you need in life. It's tough for so many people, and it's an issue that we used to think was maybe just a Vancouver or maybe just a Toronto issue, but it's certainly not just a Vancouver and Toronto issue. It's Canada-wide, and there's a couple things that are going on. One is that there's forces that are driving up the cost of housing unsustainably. We need to get at those, and we also need to build more housing. So the first part is we know that speculation through the foreign kind of markets, foreign investors that look at Canada as a stock market, and they say the stock market of housing, let's just drop our money in and drive up the cost of housing. The BC government's done some really good things. They've put in place. Yeah. They've put in place a foreign buyers tax, which has been very effective in cooling the market. We want to take that another step forward in the national level and put in place a 15% foreign buyers tax nationally. That's going to really have a powerful impact on making sure those housing prices don't go up. The second thing that's driving up the cost of housing is money laundering. And we've seen a lot of reports of money laundering having a massive impact on driving up the cost of housing, also fueling the drug trafficking and having an impact on the opioid crisis as well. So we need to get at money laundering. And again, BC is doing some good steps. BC government's done some great steps, but the federal government has failed. One of the things is there's a federal money laundering department that's set aside as a anti-money laundering department that has no one working on money laundering. So when I asked the question in Parliament, I said, Mr. Trudeau, we've got a department that's set aside to deal with money laundering. Why isn't it that anyone's working on the actual file? I'm sure you can guess his answer. He didn't answer. and I said, well, we've got to get at this. So what I'm committing to is investing in a specific anti-money laundering department, funding that, putting half of that funding towards BC to make sure we tackle it here in BC. We need to get at money laundering. It's one of the massive drivers of the cost of housing. Once we tackle these two things, alongside what we need to do is we need to build more affordable housing. We just need to build it. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to build 500,000 new affordable homes across this country, massively invest. What the government hasn't done for 30 years, we're going to do. And we're also going to help out people who need help right now. People like you who are spending 50% of your salary on housing. We want to put in place a rental subsidy to help families out that need help right now. I met a woman that was forced out of her home because she was just a little bit outside her budget and couldn't afford her rent. And it meant she was living in a tent in Campbell River. And she said to me, you know what, if it was just me, I'd be okay. But I've got my kids as well. And to that woman, I know we need to solve the problem with cooperative housing and non-market housing and invest and build them, but it's going to take some time to build them. Even if we invest all our money right away and start building those units right away, it's still going to take some time. And that woman needs help right now. And so what I'm committing is to put in place rental subsidies to help families out right now who need help while we build those affordable units. Yeah.
Hey, man. Sorry, I'm just trying to jet back from my break. My coworkers are covering a longer break so we can ask you this question.
Okay. Thank you.
I
Looks
work
like you're
12
wearing an
hours
apron,
a
so you're
day
working somewhere.
with low-income housing, shelters, supportive recovery. I literally am breathing life into overdosing people every fucking day. I'm sorry for the swearing. I'm sorry. I am so tired, man. And the pay's not great, but the work's hard, so that's nice.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I've buried 6 of my own friends. What are you gonna do? Because I'm so tired of just like CPR, naloxone, so they can get up and then get more fentanyl and drop again the next day. And I'm exhausted. What are you gonna do?
Thank you.
I wanna know.
Hold on. I got to say, that takes a lot of courage to share your story. Thank you for what you're doing. I know you got to run back, so hold on. I want to answer this because this is very important to me. The problem that we're faced with, we've got an opioid crisis. And if you think about any other crisis, let's say if there was an illness that struck Canada, a virus that struck Canada, and thousands of Canadians were dying. Thousands of our brothers and our sisters and our siblings, our parents, the people we love, our coworkers, if thousands of them were dying through to an illness, you know there would be an immediate emergency response. We'd have camps set up everywhere. We'd have a mobile response in every corner. We would respond as if it was a crisis. But just because people are dying to the opioid crisis, they get neglected and ignored, right? I met a woman just the other day here on the island who told me she lost her dad. She was in her 20s. She lost her dad to opioid overdose. This is a real crisis. And for me, on a very personal note, my dad struggled with addiction. And he lost his job. He lost a lot of weight. He went from being a 180-pound sturdy guy. He lost all his weight. He was down to 100 pounds. And I remember having to clean him because he wasn't taking care of himself. And I lifted him up to take him to the bathtub to wash him. And when I lifted up my dad, he felt like a kid. like my own dad who, used to lift me up. I lifted him up, and he was way too young for me to lift him up, and for him to be like a kid. And he didn't have any money at the time. We didn't have any money as a family. We had gone through a lot of financial difficulty. And he said when he was at the doctors, and they said, "You're gonna die if you keep on doing this." And just by chance, sometimes it works out that people, they hit rock bottom. And he said, "I don't want to die. I want to live." And in that moment, if you've met anyone that's had an addiction or mental health and they need help, there's only a small window of opportunity. And we were lucky that there was a publicly funded rehab center that was open, that had a spot available, and he was admitted, and it saved his life. And now he's healthy. But what that reminded me, and what that moment reminded, I was lucky because there were services available. So what I'm saying is that our current approach to the opioid crisis is flawed, is failed, and is wrong. Our current approach has not worked. And that means we've got to reimagine how we save lives. If our goal is to save lives, then let's do everything possible to save lives. First thing we need to immediately do is, if someone is dealing with addictions or mental health or poverty, they do not need to be criminalized. The criminal justice response is flawed. But that's not enough. I mean, that's one bold step. That's a bold step, and not a lot of people are talking about that. I want to replace the criminal justice approach with a healthcare approach. But we need to go beyond. But that also means looking at the evidence. And if there's any other way for us to save lives where experts can show there's evidence and there's clear scientific proof of a way for us to save lives, we have to have the courage to look at those solutions and be willing to put them in place. I'm going to commit to you. Whatever will save lives, I'm ready to do, whatever that may be. The first step is to respond with compassion in healthcare, but anything else we can do, this is a crisis. We need to declare a public health emergency right away, and we need to solve this right away. We can't wait. Can follow-up? He's got one follow-up. Like, that was a really emotional thing. Give me one quick follow-up.
I'm just curious to know, thank you for that, by the way, I appreciate that. Are you willing to meet with frontline workers like myself and get the actual scoop on the day-to-day stuff, so that you can know, not from people who have an opinion on it, but for people who are pumping life back into these people? Are you willing to chat with us about that?
Yes.
I would like that.
Yes.
And you got my vote.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes. You got something? Thank you, brother.
Is it on?
Yeah, he'll get it.
Sazrika.
Hey, Satsrika. Thank you.
We're lucky in Esquimalt we have one of the best MPs around
Hey.
who understands our talk. But as a disabled veteran and wounded, what can your government do for us? Because as it stands right now, as a service officer, I constantly get calls from guys and girls who are literally on the edge because they feel completely betrayed by this government. And it's sad because my time of service was during his father's time, and he's doing the same thing. He's neglecting the walking wounded. And there's actually veterans out there who won't even apply for benefits because they don't want to go through the bureaucratical minefield that's out there. So please.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for your service. Thank you. I'm sorry, you should not be treated that way, and none of your colleagues should be treated that way. That's just wrong, and I commit to you that with the new Democratic government, we'd never let that happen. We know that you've got to be treated with respect and dignity. At a minimum, what I've heard from some folks who've served, there used to be more access to a manager that would manage your file, that would actually take care of you, walk you through all those different processes, which are complicated. They shouldn't be, but that's why you need someone to actually help manage it. But they've been cut. Harper cut them, and Trudeau continues to have those cut. We reinstate that, reinstate the service qualities, make sure that you get the care that you need. You deserve to have that at a minimum. Thank you for your service. Yes, okay.
Hello. Note my color. It's natural. Even though I was an NDP candidate in the last federal election for Northeastern BC, I am not a plant. I have a question. So I'm Northeastern BC, oil and gas territory, forest industry, everything, the resource industry taking a tank. My community, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, they're suffering. People are in distress. They're losing their homes. For the price of one home down here, you could buy 6 or 7 in Fort Nelson. People are hurting. They're hurting bad. And so my question might be greeted with some booze or whatever, but the thing is, though, right now people are hurting, and they used to make their living through the oil and gas industry. And the thing is, yes, we want a great environment, we want that, but how do we get there? We need petrochemicals for our manufacturing process. Anything in this room, petrochemical processes. So I want to know, what's the plan to get there? I want to know a realistic plan to get from where we are today to the point where we're protecting the environment without hurting our people.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. It's a good question. No, it's a very fair question, and I'm glad no one booed that because it's a very important question. In fact, this is the room where you can ask that question and you should be applauded as you were, because New Democrats believe we can't fight the climate crisis unless we make sure that no worker and no working person is left behind. That's what we believe in. So what that means is, as we want to move towards a future where we're not burning any fuel, any carbon fuel for energy, we know that there's a lot of workers in the resource sector, and a lot of workers are struggling. We also know that those workers were struggling historically as well. When you work in the resource sector, there's busts and booms. And I met with a lot of people. I met with a kid who said his dad worked in the resource sector, went through busts and booms, so he's like, I'm going to go to school and get a degree so that it doesn't happen to me. And so he went out and got an engineering degree because he's remembered his dad telling him stories about times being tough and then him losing his work and then times being good and getting more work. So he got an engineering degree, went into the resource sector, and I met him at the Calgary airport, and he said, I'm also now losing my job. And I got an engineering degree. And the reality is that when we have an economy based on a certain commodity and it's not diverse, there is busts and booms. And so we owe it to the workers who are working hard. It's not their fault that commodity prices go up and down. They're working hard. They deserve to have a good life. And so my commitment is this. Our plan to fight the climate crisis has to be a plan that also is a jobs creation plan, that puts people who have talent and have skills, gives them an opportunity to work. And so what we're proposing is to tackle the climate crisis, we want to create 300,000 quality jobs in communities. One of our plans is to retrofit every home and every building in Canada. That means creating jobs in local communities. That's a way to create and spur economy in communities. You can't offshore or send these jobs anywhere else. They have to happen in a community. We also need to make investments in communities that are hard hit. Where there's instability, where there's unpredictability, those are communities that need a little extra help. And Canadians, we believe in taking care of one another. So we've got to do that. We've got to do that. So what I'm talking about is a massive, we're talking about $15 billion of investment into tackling the climate crisis, and a lot of that's going to go towards hiring people to fight the climate crisis. We've got a challenge, we've got a problem, it also creates an opportunity. We're going to need a lot of people working to fight this climate crisis. We need to invest in public transit where it's applicable. We need to invest in, of course, here in Victoria, that makes a lot of sense. But in rural communities, we need to invest in infrastructure to create jobs in those communities. We need better connectivity. We need better cell phone and internet connectivity for jobs of the future. We need to make sure workers are never left behind. And that's why our plan is to invest heavily in workers and in people.
To say this is
Start again.
Just want to say it's an honor to see you face to face. I've been following the elections since we started. I just have a couple questions. I'm going to try to keep it brief, but the first I want to ask is senior care. I was raised by my grandparents by a single father who worked in his own business. We're a home lawn maintenance company. We've been around for 28 years. My question is, my grandparents, they're on pensions. My grandfather's also a disabled veteran. So they spent, I think, for helping my sister and I, like $500,000. And as they get older now, and my father too, because I'm thinking about my family, as I get older, I'm worried really much about, the future for the seniors. My grandma is my second mom, and my God, she wish she was here right now, but unfortunately she's not doing well. She's having major surgery next Friday. You know, she, sorry, I'm just,
You're okay. You're okay. We're here with you. Don't worry.
you know, my family means a lot to me, and you know, for yourself, you know how much family means to you. And my question is, what are you going to do to help the seniors, as a lot of older people now are starting, you know, aging older, and the healthcare here in, like, not just BC, but in Canada. And yeah, I just want to know, Frat, how are you going to help the seniors and their health benefits in our country?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you very much for that. Friends, this is a really big room, lots of folks. There's cameras and lights. It's tough to ask a question. It takes a lot of courage. So thank you for asking the question. Good stuff. So a lot like, well, in this case, thank you for your grandfather's service as well. Let him know I say thank you. Just like veterans have served and contributed so much to us and sacrificed so much for us, seniors, we're only here today because of all your sacrifice, all the work you've done. You've contributed your whole life into building a better country, and you're worried about your grandparents, and they were like your parents, and I can feel that passion, like you're worried about them, and you're not alone. A lot of people are worried about their grandparents because we see our parents aging, we see our grandparents aging, and we know that the healthcare system is not always there for them, and it's scary. Like, we shouldn't have to worry about that. The whole vision, the whole dream was we had a healthcare system because we all believed in taking care of one another. We pitched into the system to make sure that people would not have to worry. Like, you wouldn't have to worry about your parents and your grandparents. And that's why we've got to change what's happened for the past, decades, where liberal and conservatives have been cutting into our healthcare system. So the reason why you're afraid today is, again, not by chance. It's not by coincidence. There used to be a 50-50 split between the province and the federal government. And now anyone know what that split is now? It used to be 50-50. Close, 80-20? Yeah, 25. It's about 25-75. So provinces are now having to do with literally half of what they had before. And so naturally that means there's less funding and there's less care. And the care that we need, that our loved ones need, is not always there for them. And it's scary. And that's why I'm committing to you. I firmly believe, I told you my dad's story, we wouldn't have had care if it wasn't for the public healthcare system. I know so many people rely on it. I believe very firmly that no matter what you earn, no matter whether you have a job or not, you should get the care that you and your loved one needs. Yes, okay. We only have time for a couple more, so make this one count. No pressure. No pressure. I'm just saying.
Can you hear me?
Pressure,
Okay.
but no pressure.
Thank you for being here. And I used to work in the downtown east side in Vancouver with folks that were on income assistance. And a lot of them had really poor oral health because they couldn't afford regular dental care. And that affected their overall health. It affected their ability to work. And I'm wondering what you plan to do about dental care, because it is health care. And I don't know why we don't see it that way.
So true. Thank you for the question. So true. So true. Thank you very much. Really good question. You're absolutely right. It's a bit arbitrary when you think about it. You could go into the hospital, God forbid, but if you need to go to the hospital, you could get open heart surgery. You can get complicated ligament surgery. But if you had a problem with your teeth, they would give you a painkiller and send you home. How does that make any sense? And you said it so well. Your dental health is directly connected to your overall health. So it's a really illogical healthcare system where you can go in and get incredibly costly surgery. You can get all sorts of treatments in our healthcare system, but you can't get your teeth fixed. And I remember meeting a woman, much like the stories you're telling me. You probably have met so many people. I met a woman who came into my office in Burnaby, and she was covering her mouth while she spoke to me. And she said, "I'm so embarrassed. I've lost some teeth because of a complication due to an illness that I have and a medication that I took, and I couldn't afford." And so she lost some teeth. And she's like, "I don't want a handout. I want to work hard. I want to take care of my family. I've got kids that I want to take care of. I don't need a handout. I just want to be able to fix my teeth." And she can't. And so, again, I look at the choices that Mr. Trudeau has made, giving billions and billions of dollars to the wealthiest, the people at the very top, and everyone else suffering. And I look at the plan that we're proposing. What we want to put in place is literally a government, publicly funded insurance program for dental care that would immediately, not It wouldn't take any negotiations. This would immediately cover 4.3 million Canadians who don't have coverage with our plan. We would give them the dental care that they need right away. I want to make this happen. I kind of get shivers when I think about it because there's so many people that would be benefited from this plan. We need to make this happen. So many people are counting on us, and I want to make this a reality. Okay, last question. Pressure's on. Where is it going to be? Okay.
Hi. So living here in BC, it was really discouraging to see First Past the Post not make it through the public referendum. And I also have a lot of friends who maybe would vote NDP or would vote Green, but feel that there's no point and they're picking between two clowns at this point. So where does your party stand, and how likely do you feel it is?
I'm assuming the clowns are the Conservative and the Liberal, just to clarify? Okay.
That's absolutely correct.
I just wanted to set that. Just in case, I was hoping.
Yeah, so just wondering what your official stance is on electoral reform.
Okay. Thank you very much. No, thank you for the question. Really important question. Thank you. So in case it's not clear, I'm a huge fan of Premier Horgan. I think he's done a lot of great things, and I think BC NDP has done a lot of great things. I think it was great to see a commitment for a referendum, and then it happened. But I was really sad with the results as well. I'm with you. And so I looked around the world and looked at different options and looked at the committee that was struck federally. And the committee made it really clear that the overwhelming majority of people in the committee that was struck federally to look at this question said that proportional representation was the way to go. So I want you all to know this. This is a commitment I'm making. This is a commitment as leader of the New Democratic Party, a new democratic government, or whatever people choose. I'm running for Prime Minister. I'm running to form government. Whatever people choose. Yeah. I will bring in mixed member proportional without a referendum. I will bring it in. I'll bring it right in. And I'll bring it in because of this. I believe in giving power to people. I believe the first past the post system, which creates false majorities, is wrong. I believe when less than 40% of the people vote for a certain party and that party gets 100% of the power, it's unjust and it's wrong. And I believe that when people are worried about who they vote for and they have to make decisions around voting strategically, it's wrong. I want people to vote their values. I'm pretty sure they end up voting for us if they did. But I think it's really important to give power back to people and make sure that every vote counts. We'll take this last question. Thanks.
Congratulations on being the next Prime Minister next month.
Thank you.
Mike, I have a couple quick questions. First of all, in BC, we cherish our ancient old growth forests. There's a lot more value in tourism for decades. Recently, some has been cut down on the island. So maybe some forestry work, I know forestry is hurting a little bit. Maybe some forestry workers could get jobs in the parks, protecting these trees. Secondly, it takes about 20 years to grow to clear cut it again, right, for the fiber, where hemp's been legal for years. Why can't we fill these clear cuts, which I wish we were selective, but anyways, the clear cuts that we have now. We could grow 4 times as much fiber every year instead of waiting 20 years. So in 20 years, when you cut down those trees, we could have got 80 times as much hemp every year. That would give everyone jobs in the forestry that's hurting. And as we all know, hemp's good for fiber, plywood, for building, clothing. It's medicine. It's everything. So
I hear you.
Yeah.
We were coming down the island, and I wanted us to detour to go to Cathedral Groves because I wanted to just be in the presence of 1,000-year-old trees and just soak in that energy. I know it's really threatened now. There's not very many old growth forests left. I would like to see them protected. Absolutely, it's a climate emergency. You're absolutely right, and protecting these old growth forests is incredibly important. I agree with you all the way. And on hemp, I think you make a really good argument that it's a very sustainable product or plant. It can grow in a way that's quick, and it can also create opportunities for employment and has multiple uses. So it's an interesting idea that you bring up, and I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Okay, friends, I got the signal that time is up. I got to take some questions from the media because they've been traveling with us, and it's important to be able to get the media to be able to share their thoughts or their ask questions so they can share that across Canada. So just bear with me. I'm going to answer, or I'm going to hang out with you right afterwards. So hang tight. We're going to get some questions from the media. Maybe if you like my answers, you can applaud, but we're going to go with some questions.
Hi, it's Annie Bergeron-Oliver with CTV National News. Back in 2017, you told Fair Vote Canada that you would, quote, consult with caucus and advocates for the inclusion of a PR system, and that would be a condition of any alliance or support for a minority government. Trudeau has publicly stated he is opposed to a PR system. So does this mean you would not support a Trudeau minority, considering he's not in favor of a proportional representation change?
So my position is I would bring in place a mixed member proportional representation. I believe in it, and I would make it contingent on anyone supporting me as Prime Minister.
With all due respect, your party, sorry, I'm going to push back a little. Your party is currently in a distant third.
It's totally fair, by the way. They're allowed to do that. It's important.
Your party is in a distant third, and there are a lot of voters who are wondering what this would mean for them. So, given the fact that a minority government is possible with the two top parties, Liberal and Conservatives, tied in the polls, I ask again, if Trudeau's not in favor of proportional representation, does this mean you wouldn't support him?
So I want to answer your question. I can't accept a premise that I'm not going to form government because I don't want anyone to think that I'm not running to form government. That's what I want to do, and I believe in it, and it's important. But I can still answer the question. It's the same thing. It's a flip side of the same thing. I would make sure it would be a requirement as Prime Minister in a minority setting that if a government or if a party wanted to work with me, it would be one of my important values that we put in place, PR. And I'd work for that. I would say that would be a part of our negotiation. So the similar question, I'm just flipping it around. If I was Prime Minister in a minority setting, I would seek parties to support me on bringing in PR because it's so important to give people a power, a voice, and then ensure that their vote counts.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Ashley Burke with CBC News.
Hi, Ashley.
Hi. BC's Green Party leader called you a hypocrite today. He said that only a few months ago you were supporting LNG here in BC, and now you're talking about eliminating oil and gas subsidies. Do you think it's wrong for BC to move forward with LNG?
My position is very clear. On day one of a new Democratic government, we end fossil fuel subsidies, and we immediately invest in the clean energy of the future because that's what we need to do. Our kids are depending on us. I also could care less what Andrew Weaver said.
So does that mean if you were elected that you would get involved to stop the LNG project?
It would mean that we have federal dollars and that none of those federal dollars should go towards investing in fossil fuel sectors. It means our federal dollars, our public dollars should go towards clean energy. Our kids are depending on that. That is what we need to do. The energy of the future is renewable and clean, and that's where all of our public dollars need to go.
Juste en français, s'il vous plaît, sur les propos de M. Weaver et sur votre position par rapport au projet de gaz liquéfié.
Donc, je ne sais pas comment dire I don't care. Je sais comment le dire, mais c'est trop rude, c'est trop agressif. Mais je veux le dire comme je ne m'inquiète pas de ce que M. Weaver dit. En plus, moi, ce que j'ai dit, je veux la première journée d'un gouvernement néo-démocrate, on va annuler les subventions pour le secteur pétrolier, on va investir l'argent public dans l'énergie renouvelable, l'énergie propre, parce que ça, c'est comment on peut aller de l'avant.
Keith Balder, Global News.
Wow, Mr. Baldry himself, folks.
Thank you for that, Jagmeet. But I want to put on my other hat as a columnist for your hometown newspaper, Burnaby Now, and
Yes.
follow up the LNG question, because I've asked you this before, and I'm going to give you another chance to be a little clearer here. There's a lot of people in this room work for the BC NDP government, which has as its centerpiece of its economic strategy the LNG Canada project. So again, do you support the LNG Canada project? And I ask that again in the light of Burnaby, because Sven Robinson, your candidate in Burnaby North Seymour, is one of the most outspoken critics of that project.
I mean, it's a tough question. I get it, and it's going to be a question that people are going to ask again and again. I can just tell you what I'm going to do, and what I would do is, as federal government, I'm in the federal government position. I have the power to control where federal dollars are going, and I would ensure that we're not spending any federal dollars on fossil fuel subsidies. I would not be spending our money that way. That's where I have control, what I have control over, and my values are this. I don't believe we should be using carbon as fuel. I know that the future depends on us moving to a renewable, clean energy future, and that's what I want to achieve.
As a follow-up on a completely different topic, and again about the Greens, we're here on Vancouver Island, where apparently they seem to be the strongest. They won the Nanaimo by-election. How concerned are you about them here on the island? And will you step up and do more in terms of calling Elizabeth May and the Greens out from your perspective in terms of political criticism?
Thank you for the question. And there's been a lot of talk about this. One clear distinction, I can put it right on the table, a very clear, really clear distinction. I have said I would not work with Mr. Scheer or the Conservatives because they cut services that families depend on. Ms. May has said very openly that she would work with and put Mr. Scheer effectively in the Prime Minister's seat. I would not do that. She also, right, that's not negotiable for me. She's also allowed, the Green Party has allowed anti-abortion candidates to run. For New Democrats, again, we do not believe the woman's right to choose is negotiable. We would not work with Conservatives, and women's right to choose, non-negotiable. Yes.
Mary Brooke from West Shore Voice News.
Hi there.
There's a lot of NDP support on the island, maybe more proportionally to the rest of the country. What do you attribute that to?
People in the island know what's good for them. But honestly, the people on the island know that you need someone that's on your side, that's going to fight for you. And New Democrats have always fought for people. We're not in it for the powerful and the rich. We're in it for people. We want to make sure there's good health care, there's investments in housing. We care passionately about the environment and want to defend and protect the environment and fight climate crisis. So people see in us the solutions that they want for a better life, and I'm proud that they do.
And a follow-up, how would you align yourself with the BC government if you were to form government? Would you, because you like a lot of the Horgan policies?
I do, it's true.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that we can work together on. I mean, I love the pilot project on childcare. In Burnaby South, there's a pilot project there, and I've met people, families that tell me it's literally changed their life. It's transformed their life. Having access to affordable childcare means that the women that I've spoken to can go back to work with the confidence of knowing their kids are safe. Families don't have to pay that massive cost. It's thousands and thousands of dollars that they're saving, which they can invest in maybe buying a home or maybe saving up for other things that they need, investing in their kids' future. That's a powerful pilot project that I'd like to expand because I want to see a day where we've got national childcare, national daycare across our country.
Encore une fois pour Radio-Canada, bonjour. Pourquoi, selon vous, le chef du Parti conservateur, Andrew Scheer, n'a-t-il pas marché pour le climat aujourd'hui? Pourquoi?
Je pense que c'est une bonne question, oui, c'est vrai. Je pense que la réponse est claire. Il ne s'inquiète pas de la crise climatique. Je pense qu'il ne croit pas qu'il y a une crise climatique. Et ça, c'est tellement inquiétant. Nous comprenons la crise et la nécessité d'agir de maintenant. Ça, c'est pourquoi on a proposé quelques mesures tellement fortes pour annuler les subventions pétrolières, pour réinvestir dans l'énergie propre, pour investir dans le transport en commun, pour aussi rénover avec des rénovations éco-énergétiques tous les bâtiments. Donc, On comprend la réalité et ils ne la comprennent pas.
Hello, I'm back again.
Hi.
You've previously said that you're opposed to fracking. Would your government ban fracking, and when?
So I believe that fracking, burning fuel, burning coal, burning carbon for energy is not the way of the future. We need to end that and move towards a future where we're no longer using carbon for fuel at all. Our future has to be clean and renewable energy, and I'd be putting all my energy, all my efforts at the federal level to achieving that goal.
But when?
I don't know how quick that would happen. I would put all my efforts into doing it right away. I would put all my energy into putting all the investments we can towards clean and renewable energy. This is something that needs to be done yesterday. It needs to have been done a long time ago, but I'm going to use all my energy and all my resources for the future to ensure that that's where we go and that's what we get done as quick as we can.
You're running to become prime minister. Should you be joking about the impeachment of the US president?
I wasn't joking. Thank you very much, friends. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you, everyone who came here tonight. I also want to give a big thank you to Jagmeet again. It has been incredible to have him here tonight, but also to have him at the climate strike. And, you know, I just think that this is so important. We have seen leadership from these young people, and it is incredible to have a leader who will stand in solidarity with us, with them. And please, everyone, a big hand for Jagmeet Singh.